Hello, it's Pete. If you watched one of my recent videos, you see the same laundry is still upstairs, but this is a different day. I think those are sheets. I think that's probably an Airbnb upstairs, and whoever cleaned it, put all the sheets out to dry, and they're just going to collect them whenever they get another client, which might be a while because things are slowing down here. Ghost town on the street again. I guess I'm going to call this a weekly wrap up video. The only reason I'm doing it a formal wrap up is there's a few tiny little odds and ends that I read that I didn't discuss on anything else. I had another video set up for today, but I pushed it out for a couple days. I guess I kind of decided to try and do a video every day this month, to schedule one every day this month, so that I can keep in good habits. So one of the things I read, let's see if this will show up here. Oh, that works great. Oh, there, can you see it? The Touchstone by Edith Wharton. I've talked about Edith Wharton a lot on this channel. I don't think I've done any of her major works since I've had the channel, though. I just mentioned her here and there. This is the first of her New York novels. Um, New York uh, novellas. It's Edith Wharton is writing, at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. She's the Gilded Age, the so-called Gilded Age, a fascinating time in history. This story takes place among the literati in the upper middle class in New York. A guy who's kind of on the skids when the novel starts out. I mean, on the skids in the sense that uh, he might have to quit his club membership because he wants to marry this woman. He doesn't think he has enough money, although he is working. He's not, the idle rich or anything. He has clients of some kind, so I guess he's a lawyer or something. And he reads about this famous author who's died, famous woman author who's died, apparently very young, is the sense I get, who's wildly famous and people are obsessed with, best-selling New York author. And he reads this article about a call from a biography for correspondence about this woman. From anybody, and we'll send you the correspondence. And then he goes to a friend of his and said, "Hey, what would just off the cuff here?" He talks to another person after seeing several. What would letters to that deceased author be worth? And his friend's like, "Well, what do you mean? It would really depend on a lot. A couple letters, the business correspondence." He goes, "Well, like a hundred love letters." The guy's like, "Huh? Well, that'd probably be worth a lot of money." Um, so it turns out this guy is had a relationship, at least an emotional relationship with this woman when earlier in their lives before either one of them was married, and she had sent him 100, around 100 love letters, and he'd held on to them all these years and never really told anybody that he'd had this kind of relationship with her. He told people that he knew her and all that, but even to his friend, he says, "Oh, a friend of mine who's also dead gave these to me, and you could publish them without anybody's name." And they're like, "Oh, sure, if the person's not as long as we can have provenance of the letters that they were actually from Mrs. I forget her name. Maybe I can find it. This is my copy here that I've been reading of Complete Edith Wharton. The name could be kept out of it. So he sells these letters from his lost love, dead woman, for quite a big sum of money. I think 10,000, 10 grand. And again, this is in like 1900 or something. I didn't think I was going to be talking about this week, so I didn't re-familiarize myself with the details. And then he's able to get married, and the and get the money, and then the book comes out, and the book of letters comes out, and he doesn't tell anybody he's associated with it. Although some people think his best friend knows that he presents himself as the friend of the person who the letters were written to, but he's actually the person they're written to. Gets married, it starts the whole thing. The whole thing starts to weigh on him, as it would. If you have any kind of a conscience, he really wonders if he's done the right thing, and incidents in his life start to make him very suspicious because he's holding the secret from everybody. Right away, the way you know that he knows he's done something, he's transgressed, morally transgressed. Not legally, because he had the legal right to the letters. They were sent to him. The woman is dead. Her reputation can't be harmed or enhanced. But, he does not tell his wife that he did this. And she ends up reading the letters, and because everybody's reading them in their New York circle, it's the big book of the season. Is these letters, these love letters from this dead author or authoress, maybe they would say at that time. And it starts to make him very suspicious. He thinks that his wife knows, and he's like, well, and he has these kind of cryptic conversations with her, like, well, you were friends with this lady. I think you'd want to read it. And he goes, what do you mean I was friends with her? You're like, well, you told me when I was young, when we first met, that you'd known her a long time ago. But she doesn't put together. But he thinks everybody's putting it together, and and it's starting to destroy him. And it's very. That's the setup. You can read it in an hour. It's a pretty short novella. It continues in that vein. I wanted to say, what I love about Edith Wharton so much is her characters are just so realistic, and very engrossing to read about. Whoever she's writing about. In the end, I have to say this one's a little bit contrived. I would say in the end, the ending is a little pat, a little too easy, and not the way she would approach material like this later in her career. I don't think. I would say pretty, pretty definitively, she did not flinch very often when it comes to the people experiencing the natural outgrowth of their behavior. And she's just a great writer. I wish more people read her. I think maybe people do it. If you read Edith Wharton, let me know in the comments, because I think she's really really great writer. I like her a little bit better. I always say this every time. I like her and Henry James for the same reasons, but I think I like Wharton a little bit better. She's a little bit easier to read. She doesn't really get lost in her own thoughts that much. She stays with the story. And so I'm going to read another book or two by her soon. One I think will qualify for Short September, Shorty September, which I'm not participating in, but I keep doing it anyway because I'm going to read Summer, which I think is her final complete novel, unless I've got it backwards. And the thing is, I never did really oh no, Summer's earlier. I never did like a really solid, look into Edith Wharton's career and how she started. I should read her biography. She has an autobiography. I kind of read them in between other things, which is not how I approach most literary authors. It's just whenever I pick up one of her books, or right away from the first paragraph, in the scene setting, I immediately want to keep reading and finish it, especially her shorter work. So that's how I've always approached her. I've never gone like straight through her career, and maybe I should do that at some point, so I'd have a better handle on how to talk about her work. But her most famous works are Ethan Frome, I think, is the most famous one, which is pretty good. It's pretty gripping. She has two stories, and I think Summer is the other one, that are set in New England, which is based on that part of her life. Most of her stories are set in New York or in Europe, the kind of people that do their European tour once in their lifetime, or women who are trying to get, young American heiresses who are trying to get European husbands, and the European husbands are trying to get wives who can bring in some family money, that kind of thing. Very good writer. Always enjoy her. And maybe I will tackle some of her nonfiction too, because she wrote some travel books that are in this complete works, and she wrote a biography, the complete works. I missed the page again. I also read another Silverberg novella. See if I can bring this up. This is kind of an experiment to see if I can use my phone for the better camera and still have something to show visuals on. Which is my unwieldy Chromebook, which you can double over to make a laptop. This is the screen on the Chromebook, and then the other side, bends back all the way back. So soon I'm going to have two cell phones because this cell phone is dying. I can get a free battery. There's some kind of battery recall or something. I can get a battery replaced for free, but I can't do it except in the UK or in the United States, and I'm not in either of those places, and I'm not planning to go. So we'll see what happens. I'll keep this phone as a backup, but I'm buying a new phone next month in Madrid. The Born with the Dead by Robert Silverberg. This version, I guess, this is usually how it's published. I got it in you can see the subtitles, 3 novellas about here and the hereafter. So this is one I always thought was a novel, but it is a novella. So when I got you can buy it now as a Kindle ebook, just by itself. And it is more typical. Well, how do I put this? In theme and in scope, it's very ambitious. In theme and in workout, it's more similar to. It's more what one would expect from Silverberg than the last one I read, which is Night Wings, which was really more kind of lyrical and fantasy-esque, whereas most of his stuff at this time was, more standard psychological science fiction, meaning about from the 60s and 70s, meaning about people and humanity and those kind of things, as opposed to like a sort of a lyrical far future thing that Night Wings was. But the reason I'm mentioning it here is just this is a wrap up, although it's really more of a talking about 1 or 2 books, because I didn't read that much that I haven't discussed yet this week. But I'm gonna have to read this is a book I definitely have to read again. It is a very deep book. It is about resurrection. People are being resurrected, and in a scientific way. It's not a fantasy; it's a science fiction novel, and the ramifications of that. And I was reading a bit about it online, and somewhere probably on Wikipedia or something. They do quote Silverberg saying is that he worked harder on this than he had worked on anything, which is probably why there's no novel version. Again, this is an award winner. I don't remember. Hugo, Nebula, probably nominated for both. Maybe one or the other, or maybe both. But generally, the thing that was done at those times is to try and figure out a way to work it up into a novel, so you could sell your Hugo Award winning short as a novel. But he did not do this. This way, it appears in those editions of like a themed anthology of 3 novellas, because it was just perfectly written, and it's kind of overwhelming. So I'll definitely have to read it again, and maybe I'll talk about it again then, but I can't do it justice because it's something I have to think more about. Anyway, so those are the 2 things I read that I haven't talked about. I've got, in a day or two, I've got another Shakespeare Shake Timber video coming up. I watched a film online a video of a stage play. I'll talk about that. Did I read any other Shakespeare books? I think I discussed them all that I've read so far. I'm going to keep going with Edith Wharton. I've got, like I said, Summer, and I want to read The Buccaneers. I've just wanted to read that for a long time, and that's why I bought this version of the cheapy complete Wharton for 99 cents because it's got the Buccaneers in it. Because I think there's a mini series starting soon. I also see there's another Forsyte Saga miniseries coming out or just came out. I'm like, oh my god, because about 2 years ago, right when I started this channel, I had watched the one from, I guess it's probably the 90s or whatever, maybe a little bit later, maybe the early aughts, because the people in that production are still around today making movies. And it was fantastic, and I wanted to read the novels and talk about them together, but now there's already another adaptation coming out of the Forsyte Saga, which was a terrific series, but I think it will be an even better trilogy of books. So maybe I'm gonna have to get to that soon too. And I watched all the Poirot movies with Peter Ustinov. No, I watched all the theatrical Poirot movies with Peter Ustinov. That's Death on the Nile, Evil Under the Sun, and then there was and then he did some TV movies. I didn't watch those. They're set in modern times. Seems weird to have. They probably did it for budget because they're TV movies. I think you can find them online. And then I watched the final one that he was in. Oh boy, I'm not going to be able to remember the name of it now in order to get it out on time, but without stopping and starting this video. But Appointment with Death, I think it was called. It was not good. It was directed by Michael Winner, whose biggest movie is probably Death Wish and a bunch of the Death Wish sequels and stuff. It was a Cannon film. If you're an old cineophile 80s person, you know all about Cannon Films, Golan Globus Films, who was this really crappy studio. They would come and they would sweep up series and do bad sequels like they did. They did Superman 4 is one of their notoriously rotten movies. They did some stuff that people really genuinely like today as insane cult movies, like this musical called The Apple, which I've never seen. I could never sit through it. They did all they did tons of Charles Bronson movies with Michael Winner, and they did all the Death Wish sequels where he becomes like more and more of an action star in each sequel. The first sequel to Death Wish is Death Wish 2 is not that bad. It's basically the same story as the first one after a few years and just on a lower budget and really flat lighting. And one thing I liked about it was the lead actress, who was shot in a way that seemed like she was the star of the movie, and I don't remember her name, so I'm going to have to, because I'm going to watch something else with her in it too, but she had a short career, but I'm kind of interested in watching her movies. And I did like those movies enough. You know, I'm one of those people, and I think everyone today is, if they care about Poirot adaptations, you got to give it to David Suchet. You just have to. He's perfect. After watching anybody else, after watching him, you don't want to see anybody else. Even Peter Ustinov, who's pretty good as a kind of a character, but you know, he's a very funny actor. He's an actor I like very much. And those movies, the earlier ones with him, which were done by basically the same people who did Murder on the Orient Express with Albert Finney, but Albert Finney didn't want to continue. So I did watch. I watched those. I enjoyed them. Then I went back and watched Murder on the Orient Express, which is directed by Sidney Lumet. Not his regular kind of stuff. You know, he did, you know, like social dramas and things. He did The Pawnbroker, one of the greatest social dramas of the 50s with Rod Steiger, and 12 Angry Men is his first movie and that kind of thing. But he did this movie, and, you know, the first thing you notice if you watch all the Ustinov ones after, which were all under the same production umbrella, but not with the same people, is how much of a difference a truly great director makes. There is some stuff in Murder on the Orient Express that is so well done that I haven't really thought of, and I wouldn't necessarily think of if I hadn't seen the other approach to the to the classic Poirot novels just in the same week. So I spent a lot of time doing that. I watched a classic movie that I'd never seen, On the Waterfront. I was looking for the Marlon Brando Julius Caesar, and realized I'd never seen On the Waterfront. Although I had read, I guess this relates to books a bit relates to books a bit because I did read the play at one time of On the Waterfront. I always avoided it because I just can't stand Vivian Leigh. I never could stand her. I couldn't stand her in Gone with the Wind. I couldn't stand her in the earlier British movies she made with her husband Laurence Olivier. I just don't like that kind of acting and that kind of that kind of very stagey kind of uh, plucky heroine stuff. I always thought she was very fake, and she ruined. And there'd be a lot of movies. She was in a lot of movies with like Rex Harrison and Charles Lawton early on. And movies I wanted to see, but I got to sit through Vivian Leigh's absurd performances. But I have to say, she is so fantastic and On the Waterfront. So maybe I'll like her in other things now. And she is playing Blanche Dubois, this insane character, who's a very theatrical character herself. I've always depended on the kindness of strangers, is the quote that comes from that movie, I think. I mean, from the play, I guess. I don't remember them saying the movie. And, Brando, I'll probably get canceled for saying this. No, I won't get canceled for saying this. But to me, Brando's method style seems very mannered, looking at it from a modern perspective. So neither one of them is really very naturalistic. Kim Novak is in that movie. She plays Blanche's sister, who's married to this thug, brute animal, played by Brando, and I'll just mention her because she's Zira in the Planet of the Apes movies, and I love those, and so it's fun to see her with her face, and she was also in the Broadway play. Everybody in the cast, um, most of the major people in the cast from the play, the Elia Kazan directed play of by Tennessee Williams, is in the film, except I think Blanche was played by probably, I want to say, Jessica Tandy in the movie. I mean, on Broadway, but she either. I think what often happens at these times, especially with the female lead in Broadway play would often get screwed out of it when it came to Hollywood because the producers would want like a more famous or younger or prettier actor to play the lead. That was a very common thing if you read about these great Broadway plays and who played it uh, um, on the stage versus the screen. Um, but they kept Brando, of course, because he was the hot thing, and this I think is his first movie. Um, and Carl Malden's in it, who's one of the most amazing actors of all time. People know him if they know him at all now. They might know him from Streets of San Francisco, where he was the older detective partner of Michael Douglas. But when you see '50s movies with Carl Malden in him, he's always a highlight. He's such an intelligent actor, and so I really love that film. Here again, it's an example of a great film director. Great writing, great direction. They as they're filming the play, they kept making the apartment smaller and smaller because the sort of premise is that Blanche Dubois gets fired from a school she's working at. Um, she comes to live with her sister, and Blanche is very hoity-toity. The sisters, when they were young, grew up on a plantation or some kind of estate or something, at least, that they've lost control of. And Marlon Brando plays Stanley Kowalski, her initially uncouth, but then just totally monstrous husband. Um, I think they might have sanitized a bit of the end. I think it's a it's pretty dark ending still, but I think they maybe tried to save Kim. I, have I been seeing Kim Novak? I probably have, haven't I? But whoever wasn't Kim Novak, Kim. Anyway, look it up if you want. Kim, who played Zira in the Planet of the Apes movies, and who played the sister of Blanche in this movie. Uh, I feel bad I can't remember her name, but she's not in a lot of movies. But I think she was on stage a lot. She was also in that movie Stairway to Heaven with um, and it has another name too. I think they've changed the name because of the association with the the song. But the movie Stairway to Heaven is by Powell and Pressburger, and it's kind of a fantasy romance movie. She's in that. I guess that's her biggest movie, other than the ones I mentioned. Um, and I saw something with David Niven. Oh, he was in one of the Poirot movies, Death on the Nile, which I do in book form and in the movie form and in everything else. I think I prefer Death on the Nile to Murder on the Orient Express. Something about Murder on the Orient Express, and I think Sidney Lumet kind of understood the his brief on that movie, but it's almost too much. It's too much gimmick. Let me put it that way, for it to be a really great, enjoyable mystery on its own. And I do always admire Agatha Christie's genius in working out plots and making sense out of them, and to the point where they're often very absurd. And this, in someone else's hands, could have just fallen apart very easily, because very early on, various characters' connections to the deceased are absurd. How would they all be in this place? And then the answer, when you think about it, becomes obvious. So I had known the answer because I'd seen the various versions of the production. I've seen the Suchet one. I've seen the Kenneth Branagh one, most pointless series of movies ever made. The Kenneth Branagh Poirot movies. He's not correct for the character. I know he said that he thinks, well, I just want to do it in a different way, because why do the same thing again? But if even if he'd have just played Sherlock Holmes in something, or if he played Bulldog Drummond or the Falcon or the Saint or something, I guess none of those properties, except for Sherlock Holmes, I guess the other three aren't well known anymore, and so maybe the studio was more receptive to, hey, this guy's a famous British actor, and Murder on the Orient Express is a famous British title, and yeah, we'll let him do it. And then sequels, because sequels are what we do now. But he's got guts. I'll say Branagh has guts, because I don't know why you would look at Murder on the Orient Express, 1974, Sidney Lumet, and this very powerful opening sequence, montage sequence of the crime that leads up to, that is the background for the crime in the story, and think, yeah, I could do a good version of this. I would stay away from it. Why doesn't he just remake Citizen Kane while he's at it? And I'm not saying that the 74 version is the Citizen Kane of crime movies or anything, but it is done. It is done in, for one a better word, an elevated way. The murder scene, like usually the murder scene in a Christie novel or an adaptation is, you don't really see it until Poirot lays it out. He gets the suspects together. She writes closed circle mysteries where there's a location where only certain people could have done it, and Poirot goes through all those suspects. That's the basic formula of many of them, and he gets everybody together in the final act. It's always a great moment in those books, and even in the adaptation of them, when Poirot has everybody sitting together and they're all like, "Well, you better be done within a half an hour because I have a flight to Cairo and I will not miss it because I'm Daché, whatever." And all these big important people. He's like, "Hey, it'll be revealed. Everything will be revealed. I promise you, monsieur." And and that happens in this, and the way that Sidney Lumet con- constructs that crime in the flashback is just so well shot, so well organized, so well directed, and you've got all these big actors, none of which gets very much screen time, because it is a fairly short adaptation, considering you have to get everything into a mystery adaptation of a whodunit like this. You have to get all the clues in. You have to get all the suspects in. It's not, sometimes they manage to cut out a few minor characters in some of these, but you can't really cut that much out of a Christie thing because it's so well constructed, so well put together. If you take two characters and you don't explain how they couldn't have been where they were and all that, just you can't really cut that for time. So he still does a good job in only 2 hours of covering all the characters, but they every one of them is a great professional. It's got a big, an amazing cast: Lauren Bacall, Ingrid Bergman, Sean Connery, Richard Widmark, Michael York, Jacqueline Bisset. It's wall to wall stars of that time and of early eras. Betty Davis, and he manages to give them all their moment. Their screen moments, so you have a sense of each one of them. Anyway, so like I said, I watched a bunch of movies. Did I watch anything dumb? Sometimes more fun to watch, to talk about dumb stuff. But those are the movies I watched, in addition to the Shakespeare stuff that I looked at, that I'll discuss in a video that's coming up in a day or two. And I just want to say, just remember that everybody around you, is also a human being, and I just I don't know. Yeah, just remember the people. Be kind to your neighbors. Realize that everybody's doing the best. Well, most people are doing the best they can, and we're not each other's enemies in the United States. We should not be. It should not have gotten to this point, but it has, and I don't know what the solution's going to be. But it can't be. It can't go on like this. It can't go on with like half the country hating the other half for their beliefs. It's just, it's not leading to a good place. So think about that and everything else, and have fun reading. Talk to you later.